Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We had a wonderful concert yesterday. The choir sang very well, but more importantly, in that first part, Simon Estes was there. He sang amazingly. This is a guy who has traveled the world. He grew up in Iowa, and you are very fortunate to hear him. This is Simon Estes.
Good morning. It's great to see you all here. How many of you were in the choir yesterday? Would you raise your hands? We did a great job. I'm sorry I didn't get to sing with you, but what I heard you, and I told your conductor, he's fantastic because he just jumps all around. That shows a lot of enthusiasm. And some of the greatest conductors in the world, they can't just stand on that podium because they conduct with their whole bodies. And I thought he was fantastic, and you sang magnificently well. As the director said, I was born in Iowa, a little town called Centerville, Iowa, way back in 1938. Those of you who are good in math can calculate how old I am. And Fairfield was a very important town to me because one of my favorite teachers and a favorite coach went to Parsons College, and his name was Bill Jerome. And he came here, I think it was he graduated, I think, in 1952 or 1951 from Parsons College. I'm sure you've heard of Parsons, right? Yes. Well, as soon as he graduated, he came back to Centerville and taught at the high school and was one of the coaches. And he was very instrumental in my life because he was a great mentor. And I'll go back a little bit more about my family, but I'll mention another teacher who was very important. He wasn't really the teacher. He was the superintendent of all the schools. His name was E.W. Fannin. And Mr. Fannin, the moment he walked out on the stage, we had such respect and we revered him. We immediately were quiet. We didn't say one single word. And he had a voice that was about as low as mine. And so one time when I was a junior in high school, Mr. Fannin invited me to come over to his house and have a piece of cake with him and his wife. And of course, the first thing that entered my mind was, what in the world have I done now that the superintendent has invited me over to his house? But it ended up being something very positive, and I didn't know what it really meant. But he said to me, he said, Simon, if you continue to work hard and study hard in school, keep your nose to the grindstone, he said, you're going to be somebody someday. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I said, well, thank you, Mr. Fannin. And Bill Jerome taught health, and he was also our football, basketball, and track coach. And he really loved Parsons College, and I'd never been to Fairfield until I arrived here yesterday morning. And it's a wonderful town. And Bill Jerome's wife, her name was Dodie, she also graduated out of high school here in Fairfield. He was a freshman in Parsons, and she was a senior in high school, and she was here yesterday at the concert. And I never knew how she and Bill Jerome met. And so she told me yesterday that, as I said, she was the senior in high school, and he was a freshman in Parsons. And they started dating, and they ended up getting married, and they came to Centerville, Iowa. So I was so happy to come to Fairfield because of Bill Jerome. And then, of course, to be able to come here and share the talent of singing with all of you here in the town and who were in the choir and the concert last night. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about my family. My grandfather, my father's father, was a slave, sold for $500. I have pictures of him and his wife. My father was born in 1891, and he couldn't read or write. He came to Centerville because Centerville was a town that had 3 very important coal mines. It was a coal mining town in those days, in those years. And we had people from really all around the world, from Italy, from Croatia, from England, from Spain, from Africa, from Israel, really all over because it was the coal mines. And our population was about 8,000 people. And then once the coal mines kind of died off, Centerville kind of died off, and now they only have about 5,000 people. But in my family, we were very, very, very poor. My father never made more than $18 a week, and that was to support a family of 6. his wife, my mother, and 4 children. I had 3 older sisters, and I was the baby, and the last one, so my mother was happy she finally had a son. But we were so poor that we didn't have running water in our home, we didn't have an indoor toilet, we didn't have electricity, and I was born in a little house in Centerville, 910 East Jackson Street. And I just found out something from my manager, Paul Fedrone, who arranged the concert here. Just before we left the hotel here, he said, "Simon, I have an email, I want to read it to you." And there's some people in Centerville, and I just found this out just before I came here, that the little house in which I was born, it is still there in Centerville, and I go see it once in a while. It's a very, 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 very small house. And they're going to buy the house from some people, renovate it, and turn it into a Simon Estes museum. So you're the first people to know about this. But at any rate, we were very poor. We were very poor, economically speaking, but we were millionaires in our faith in God and in the importance and the value of education. Now, even though my father couldn't read or write, he always said to me, he said, "Son, you must get an education. That is something that nobody can ever take away from you." And so my father worked in the coal mines, and he had to stop because he had asthma and hay fever, and he came to Iowa from Virginia via Missouri. And so in a way, I realized that's probably why he lived as long as he did, because so many of the people that worked in the coal mines in those years, I'm sure some of you know this, especially those of us who are advanced citizens, those coal mines, people that usually died between 50 and 60 years of old because of the black dust that they inhaled into their lungs. And so because my father had asthma, he wasn't able to do that, so he washed cars, he cleaned doctor's offices, he worked in a hotel, et cetera. But as I said, we were very, very poor, but we went to church 2 times on Sunday, Sunday morning and Sunday night. We went to prayer meeting on Wednesday and choir rehearsal on Thursday. So I grew up in the church and in school. And I mention that because as human beings, we need 3 forms of nourishment. We need nutrition for our bodies, that is to eat healthy and to eat well when possible. So we get nutrition for the development of our bodies. Our minds or our brain, they have to have nutrition, and that nutrition comes from schools, your teachers. So that nourishment for the brain is vitally important. I'm a Christian, so I feel we have to have spiritual nourishment. So I get spiritual nourishment. I read and study my Bible every day, and I pray every day. And so we need those 3 forms of nourishment in order to become a total person. And I want to tell you something, young people. I'm going to give you a very, very, very easy test. Your parents have you for you're about 5 years of age, so you go either preschool, kindergarten, or 1st grade. And so that's 5 years. Who has you for the next 13 years? Someone want to answer that? What? I didn't hear what he said. Just think, who has you for the next 13 years until you're 18 years of age? Teachers. Whoever said that gets an A. Teachers are vitally important in all of our lives, and sometimes we don't realize that. There are lots of things we take for granted. But our parents have us for 5 years, and until we're 18 years of age, your teachers are the ones that really direct your life. They help you get education. They not only teach you different subjects, but they teach you to have good character. And you're very fortunate, because I've traveled all around the world to have a school as wonderful as this school is here, because there are millions of children that they don't even have a school building to go. But your teachers are the ones who are mentors for you, whether you realize that or not. And so this is why I always stress education, because had it not been for education and teachers, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I went to the University of Iowa. I have my degree from the University of Iowa. I also have an honorary doctorate from Iowa State University, and I'm a professor there now. So I always say when the Hawkeyes and the Cyclones play, I never lose. So that's kind of a good thing. But at any rate, a teacher at the University of Iowa heard me singing in a group called the Old Gold Singers. And he told me, he said, Simon, you have a voice to sing opera. Having come from Centerville, Iowa, I said, what's opera? So he loaned me some recordings, records, as we call them in those days, those big round ones, you know. And I listened to those recordings of great opera singers. And I took them back to Mr. Kellis. His name was Charles Kellis. I said, I really like that stuff. I called it stuff because I didn't know anything about opera. And so he worked with me privately, giving me voice lessons, et cetera, et cetera. And then he said, you know, you need to go to an all-musical school, Simon. He said, because I promise you, you have a voice to sing opera. So he had arranged an audition for me at the famous Juilliard School of Music in New York City. How many of you have heard of Juilliard School of Music? Well, that's great. It's the most famous conservatory, let's say, or college. It's not a college or a university. It's a performing arts school in the whole world. So he arranged an audition for me. I flew out to New York. Had never been to New York before to audition at Juilliard. I think I was more excited back in those days at looking at the tall buildings than I was singing for Juilliard. So I go and I sing. And after I finished singing my 3 pieces, they told me to wait outside of the room there. And I found out later they never did it this way. Then they called me back in about 10 minutes. And they said, we'd like to give you a full scholarship to go to Juilliard School of Music. I was really naive. I was from Centerville, a little town smaller than Fairfield. And I didn't realize the magnitude of Juilliard. So when they said, we would like to invite you to come, we would like to give you a full scholarship, I said, oh, well, thanks. And they kind of looked at me about, this guy's really weird, you know? And they said, and we'll get you a Rockefeller grant. A Rockefeller, I didn't know anything about the Rockefeller family either, but I still had to work. And when I was at the University of Iowa, because my family was so poor, I had to support myself. I shined shoes, I cleaned toilets, I washed windows, I did everything to work my way through the University of Iowa. And of course at Juilliard, they know I didn't have money. They got me a Rockefeller grant, but I still had to work. So I worked in the kitchen at Juilliard in the washing pots and pans. And then eventually I had a chance to go to Germany. And I'll make a long story short, but I flew over to Düsseldorf, Germany on December 24th, 1964 and sang for a manager or an agent who was going to arrange an audition for me to sing in an opera house in West Berlin, Germany, as it was called in those days. So he liked my voice. He sent me there. They offered me a contract immediately, but at that time I was still a student at Juilliard. But they really wanted me to come and sing. So I made my debut, my first opera performance in my life, in Berlin, Germany in 1965 at the Deutsche Oper, which means the German Opera House. And from that time on, my career really took off. In 1966, the State Department of the United States had heard about my singing in Germany, and they said, we'd like you to represent the United States in Moscow, Russia in 1966 at the famous Tchaikovsky competition. And it was the first year they had it open to singers. It was always open for pianists and violinists, et cetera, but never singers. So I represented the United States in 1966, and I went there. I was very blessed. I got the bronze medal. I got 3rd place, but that was good enough. The President Johnson, who was president at that time, invited me to come and sing at the White House. From that point on, my career really took off. But I mentioned that to you because I never dreamed, growing up in Centerville, Iowa, that I would get farther east to maybe Chicago, Illinois. And now I've been to Hong Kong and Tokyo and Australia, etc. I've been all around the world. All because God gave me a gift, a talent to sing. And I want all of you to know that every human being sitting here today has a talent. Sometimes we don't find out what our talents are, and sometimes we do. But I didn't realize that I had this special voice to sing opera. When we sing opera, we never use microphones. God has given us very special, we call them vocal folds or vocal cords. It's really folds, we call them, it's a fold. It's like 2 little muscles that come together. When the air passes over it, they vibrate. And that's how we sing and how we speak. But opera singers are very blessed. Maybe some of them don't give God credit for it. But we have very special voices. Now, for example, the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City has over 4,400 seats. We have an orchestra pit, as we call it, in front of us. sometimes 85, 100 members playing in the orchestra. And we have to have these very special voices. I'm not saying that our voices are better than a popular singer or a jazz singer or people that sing other songs, but if they didn't have microphones, you would not hear them. So God gave opera singers these very special vocal cords that we have to fill up an entire opera house without the use of amplification. And so we have to make sure we're very healthy. And when we sing in opera, most of the operas I sing are in languages other than English. I sing in German, Italian, French, Spanish, Russian, and of course English. And so you have to do all these operas and you have to have them all memorized. But the most important aspect of it is that you have to have this very, very special gift. The reason I say that everyone has a gift is because you do. You might have a gift to be a school teacher, or a veterinarian, or a doctor, or a biologist, or a chemist, or a minister, or yes, even a custodian. When I was at Centerville, Iowa, the job I had in the summertime was helping to clean the high school. And Lauren Carth, he was the head custodian of all of the schools in Centerville, but especially the high school. And so I had to wash the windows and scrub floors, but Lauren Carth told Jim Galloway and me, Jim was in my class, he said, I'm gonna hire you boys. I think they paid us 15 cents an hour to wash windows in the high school. And he said, if you're gonna wash the windows and you're gonna work for me, he said, you're gonna do the job right or I will fire you. And so I grew up knowing the responsibility. Regardless of what the job is, you have to do it and you have to do it well. Do it well, but the most important job for all of you sitting here right now, you young people, is your education. Your teachers are here to help give you knowledge and understanding so that you can become a better person, whatever you decide to do. And each one of you, remember, you have a gift, and you just have to develop that gift. And if you are determined and disciplined, and you will always be able to achieve. But now, remember I told you I didn't think I'd ever get even farther east in Chicago. Well, not only have I've sung on every continent on this planet Earth. I've sung with a lot of important people. I've sung for 6 presidents of the United States, including our present president. The first one I sang for was President Johnson back in 1966. I've sung for the Nobel Prize Committee. I've sung with all of the main opera singers in the world. I've sung with 115 different orchestras all around the world in 84 different opera houses, over 90 famous conductors. And in addition to being an opera singer, I have sung with what we would call singers that are not opera singers. And I'll just ask you another little small test. How many of you know the name John Denver? Let's see, some of you do. Okay, well, I sang with John Denver at the White House many years ago when President Bush, the father, was president. How many of you know Whitney Houston, the name Whitney Houston? I sang with Whitney Houston. I sang with Johnny Cash. How many of you know the name Johnny Cash? I sang with Johnny Cash. And I could go on and on. I sang for Denzel Washington when I sang for the Nobel Prize Committee. How many of you saw the movie To Kill a Mockingbird? Gregory Peck was in that movie, and I performed with Gregory Peck, and Audrey Hepburn was also there. All of this is because of a talent that God gave me to sing. But in addition to the talent, I had to work hard. I had to study. And when I was in school, the teachers, the people that I respected the most in Centerville, Iowa, when I was growing up, first of all, the first 2 mentors were my mother and my father. As I said, my father, he couldn't read and he couldn't write. My mother had an 11th grade education. But back in those days, that was quite an achievement for a person of color. And Centerville was no different than Fairfield or any other town. There was discrimination when I was growing up in Centerville. We were called colored in those days. We were not allowed to sit downstairs in a movie theater with white people. It was just forbidden. Now, number one, I wasn't allowed to go to the movies because of the violence with Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and their 6-shooters. So my parents didn't want me to see any of this violence. And of course, today I think movies are a little more violent than Roy Rogers. But nonetheless, one time, all of my friends were white because I was the only colored person in my high school graduating class. My friends decided they were going to go to a movie one night and invited me to come go with them. So I went with them and it cost a dime, so I paid my dime. And I started to walk upstairs. My friend said, Si, where are you going? I said, I'm going to sit down. They said, well, come sit with us. I said, I'm not allowed to sit down there. They were not aware of it as young people, that colored people were not allowed to sit downstairs. And so I said, well, I really can't. They said, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. I said, no, colored people are not allowed to sit there. So I mustered up a little courage with my friends, so I started to walk with them to sit downstairs, and they had one little corner up by the toilets and the projector room where the colored people had to sit. And so we couldn't see the screen as well up there, but nonetheless, I started to go to sit with my friends, and sure enough, the manager saw me. His name was Mr. Johnson, and he yelled, "Hey, Estes," he said, "where do you think you're going?" And before I had a chance to answer, my white friend said, Si is sitting with us. He said, no, he's not. Colored people can't sit down here in this movie theater. Now you get up there where you belong, boy. It just so happened that my friends, a lot of them, those three that I went with, one's father was a doctor, another was a lawyer, another man, the father owned his business. And the owner of the Majestic Movie Theater, he was being paid by the city of the Chamber of Commerce because he didn't own the theaters. He was just a manager. And he said, no, Simon's not sitting up there. He said, yes, he is. And then one boy looked at him and he said, if you don't let Simon sit with us, I'm going to tell my dad. He said, and you'll fire you. So I thought, great, so I sat downstairs with my white friends. It was just wonderful to sit there and look at that screen up there, and didn't smell like the toilet or anything. So what did I do? After the movie came out, and I told my colored friends, I said, hey, we can sit downstairs with white people now. They said, what are you talking about? I said, no, we really can. And sure enough, the young people started sitting downstairs, but the older colored people, they were very conditioned. They were still afraid to sit downstairs. We weren't allowed to swim in the swimming pool with white children. And eventually they would let us swim on Saturday mornings only. In the summertime, it's just as hot on Wednesdays as it is Saturday. But they would let us swim from 9 o'clock till 11. And then we had to get out of the pool, and they would put more disinfectant in the water. Now, I'm not saying that, Centerville was worse than Alvia or Knoxville, but that's the way it was in those days. There were a number of restaurants we could not eat in Centerville because of being colored people. But my parents taught my sisters and me never to hate white people. They said no matter what they do to you, you must not hate them. You don't have to like what they do to you, but that's as far as you go. And if I would come home, for example, and tell my mother or my father that a white boy hit me or called me the N-word, my mother said, well, now you get down on your knees and you pray for that boy. And you think, now wait a minute, mother, you didn't understand what I said. He hit me, he called me the N-word. She said, no, you get down on your knees and you pray. So I was taught at a very young age not to accept the actions of discrimination and prejudice, but not to hate the person. We don't have to like what someone does to us, but we must not hate. And I'm happy that they taught me that way, because when I first started singing opera, there were a lot of opera houses here in the United States that they wouldn't let me sing at the opera houses. And I'd already sung in London and Paris and Berlin and Rome and Vienna and South America, Australia, all around the world, but I couldn't sing in certain opera houses in my own country. And I remember in 1971, I called my mother from New York. I was living in New York City. I was in tears. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was crying. I said, Mother, I sing in all these opera houses in the world, and they won't let me sing in my own country, in our major opera houses. And my mother said, well, son, you get down on your knees and you pray. So as a result of that, I sung in every opera house in the United States and all the major opera houses in the world. And for it has been, it's been a great education to travel all around the world and realize that we are all children of God. We might differ in skin color, the shades of our eyes, but we are all God's children. And so it's been an educational experience to appreciate the different cultures and the architecture and the languages of people in different countries. And all of this happened because why? God gave me a talent to sing, and I had teachers, elementary school, high school, University of Iowa, that encouraged me, and that's why I'm sitting here today. And so I want all of you to know, I don't tell you these things to try to impress you, but just to let you know, each one of you can become whoever or whatever you want to be. I sang many times for Nelson Mandela, who was when I was in the prison to visit the cell that he was in, where he was unjustly incarcerated in prison for 27 years. He was one of the greatest persons I ever met in my life. As I said, I've sung for many presidents, many kings and queens all around the world, all because of the talent that God gave me and the talent, this ability to sing opera. And it's been really fascinating. I've sung 102 different roles, meaning 102 different characters in different operas. I've been kings and fathers and broken down czars from Russia, all these different characters I've had to act and to play. But it's been really rewarding. And the reason I am here, actually, I'm a professor also at Wartburg College now at Iowa State, but I was a professor out at Boston University for many years. And my wife said to me, she said, Simon, you need to slow down, because I was singing all around the world also. Why don't you go to Iowa and just help young students in Iowa? So I thought about it. We probably prayed about it. At any rate, I resigned from Boston University, but I enjoyed my time out there when I was there. They invited me to come to Harvard University and do some lectures and master classes. But I decided to come to Iowa. And I thought, well, what can I do? I thought, why not try to sing in all 99 counties and give 50% of my fee into the Simon Estes Foundation for scholarships for the students in all 99 counties. And so I started doing that a few years ago, and we've given now 175 scholarships. Some of you can apply for scholarships in that I've been here, and you can study whatever area you want to study. It doesn't have to be music. And I've had scholarship funds all around the world, actually. I had the Simon Estes International Children's Foundation in Zurich, Switzerland, to help children with health problems and issues that they have. When I was in Switzerland, they had a children's hospital. When children have to have bone marrow transplant operations, they have to live in a sterilized environment, like a little room, for about 6 months or longer until their immune systems get developed, because they can't fight off germs. So I did a big concert in what was like our Carnegie Hall in New York City. It was called the Tone Hall in Zurich, Switzerland. And in that one concert, we raised over $400,000. I gave all the money to the children's hospitals. They built 2 more rooms to help save children's lives. And I founded a high school, the Simon Estes Music High School in Cape Town, South Africa. When Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa, they invited me to sing, and I was the first person of color outside of Africa to ever sing on that stage in Cape Town, South Africa. And that was a great experience, and it was incidentally, it's a beautiful country. I've said before, I've sung many times in Australia, and I think I've sung for 26 different prime ministers and presidents all around the world, all because of what? Music, talent, and education. So I cannot tell all of you how important it is that you realize how blessed you are that you have these teachers here who care about you, who are instructing you to be someone very special, not only for yourself, but to help someone else, even within the school. If one of you is better in biology than the others in history, then help each other. I believe God has put all of us on this earth for 2 main purposes: to serve Him, to love Him, and to serve and love one another. We are put on this earth to help people and to be kind and to be generous and also forgiving if somebody makes a mistake. Jesus taught us to forgive. And I tell you, the greatest book, I've read lots of books in my day, but the greatest book I've ever read is the Bible. I've read it through 3 times, from Genesis through Revelation. And my mother told me at a very young age, she said, son, if you have a question and you need an answer, you'll always find the answer in the Bible. You know what? She was right. And so I'm very grateful that I was brought up in education, in faith, and in forgiveness in case somebody does something wrong to you. Now, I could go on and on for a long, long time, but I want to let you ask some questions. And I would always tell young people there's no such thing as a silly question. In fact, someone once made a statement: people who ask questions are the most intelligent people. Why? Because there's something that maybe they don't know or they want to know about, so they ask the question. I'm sure many times you'll ask your teacher something. They're here to try to give you the answer. So you don't have to laugh if somebody asks a question you think it's kind of funny. Is it still on? Okay, right over here.
Can you sing for us?
There's always a guy like you in every...
You said you could sing opera.
That's right. I do sing opera, but I also sing other songs too. When I was growing up, the only music I knew were singers like you don't know if you know the names like Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole. Do you know those names at least? That's the kind of music that I thought I was going to sing. But opera singers, I tell you, because we don't use microphones, it's like an athlete. How many of you people here, ladies and gentlemen, are involved in a sport? Would you raise your hands? Okay, it's quite a few. Now, in professional ball, and I've met a lot of professional athletes also, do they play a football game 7 days a week? No. Do they play a basketball game 7 days a week? No. Do they play soccer 7 games? They don't. I say that because in that we are using these two little muscles that are about 1/4 of an inch long, we have to rest our voices. And last night, I sang a concert. I got a little ill last night. But normally, we never sing 2 or 3 days in a row because operas last 4 hours and some even 5 hours. And we have to sing that to the end of the opera sometimes, from the beginning to the end. And we don't sing exactly the whole time, 5 hours. But sometimes someone can sing for an hour, hour and a half. And it's always using that power. So the reason I say that is because I sang yesterday. And maybe I'll come back and sing again. And then were you there yesterday?
I was not.
He wasn't there. Naughty, naughty boy. He told the truth, but I know why you weren't here. You were home studying, so good for you. No? Yes, right back there.
How hard is it? How hard is it to sing opera?
How hard is it to sing opera? Actually, it's hard in a way because we think we only sing with our voices, but we sing with our whole bodies. Like I said, your choral director, where is he? Yeah, he's right back there. I love watching him from the side of the stage because he wasn't just standing there doing this. He was moving and he was really conducting with all of his body. And so when we sing opera, we have to act. And sometimes we have to be kneeling or lying down or standing up or running. So we have to be in a very good physical condition in order to be able to sing that long. And we have to learn how to develop a vocal technique, how to let's say, like a distance runner who's running, 10,000 kilometers or whatever it may be. They don't start out running as fast as they can. They have to pace themselves. And so opera singers, we're really like athletes, and we don't sing every day. So maybe I'll come back another time and sing, and you better be here too if I come back. Okay? All right. Another question? Yes.
What are some of the favorite performances you've ever done?
What are some of the famous performances I've ever sung? Well, one of them was when I sang for the Nobel Prize Committee a number of years ago. They were having a conference in Oslo, Norway, and the title was The Anatomy of Hate. Why do we have hate in the world? And there were people there from 52 different countries. And that's when I sang for the first time with Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. President Jimmy Carter was there from the United States. Francois Mitterrand, who was the president from France, he was there. Havel was the president there from Czechoslovakia. Nelson Mandela had just gotten out of prison. He was there. And I mention that because it was a performance in which I wasn't paid. They contacted me in Switzerland. I was living in Zurich. At that time, I lived in Switzerland for about 30 years. And as a matter of fact, 2 of my daughters were born in Switzerland, 1 in the United States. But I went there and didn't receive any money, but they paid my airplane ticket, hotel, food, et cetera. But it was so educational because they wanted to know, why do we have hate in the world? What can we do to reduce it or to even eradicate it if possible? So we had educators, we had doctors and people in different professions and many presidents from around the world. I mention that because it was an educational experience. I wasn't paid money, but I got a lot of knowledge. But it was also a great honor when I sang at the White House for the presidents. It was a great honor to sing for Nelson Mandela because of being one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. And yes, go ahead.
So you have kids. Are they also singing, or?
Boy said I have kids. I don't have goats. I have children. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I have 3 daughters. No, they don't. They can sing, like probably everybody here can sing, but they never went into music professionally. My oldest daughter played the flute, and my 2 other daughters played piano and harp. but I was the only one that sang. And one graduated from Boston University, where I was a professor, and my other daughter graduated from Wartburg College, where I'm a professor, and my oldest daughter has 3 degrees from Zurich, Switzerland. So neither of them sang. Yeah. Want to see a hand back there someplace? Okay, right there in the middle. Can my wife sing? Yeah, but she's a registered nurse. But... Yes.
What's your favorite or the most beautiful country you've ever been to, if you had to pick one?
What is my favorite and most beautiful country I've ever been in? Well, I can really tell you this whole earth is very beautiful that God made. Now, one of the most beautiful countries in the world really is the United States. For another reason, because of our Grand Canyon in the western part of the United States. But Perth, Australia, which is on the western coast of Australia, is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been in, and it's on the Indian Ocean. And Cape Town, South Africa, is also an extraordinarily beautiful area in the country. It's kind of hard to say. As I said, I lived in Switzerland and Europe for about 40 years. The Swiss Alps, the Austrian Alps, the Italian Alps, the French Alps are all Alps. It's so beautiful there. And that's another reason I feel very blessed, is the fact that I have really been on every continent, as I said before. The only continent I haven't sung on yet is the Antarctic, and the penguins haven't invited me to come there yet. But I wear their costume once in a while. But I hope to sing, not to sing rather, but I hope to see the Antarctic someday. Yes.
I've actually lived in Centerville for most of my life until I was 13.
Do you hear that? One of your friends here lived in Centerville for many years until you were 13?
Yeah.
Well, you're my friend. You're from Centerville. How are they treating you here in this foreign country of Fairfield? Are they nice to you?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Yes.
If you hadn't been a singer, what would you have done?
If I hadn't been a singer, what would I have done? I really believe I would have done something working with people, because I've always loved helping people. I probably would have been in behavioral sciences. I started out actually in pre-med at the University of Iowa, and then I changed my mind. I was interested in theology, so I took a course in theology. Then I was interested in social psychology until this teacher discovered me, so I changed my major 4 times. I don't advise you to go to college and change your mind 4 times, but I changed 4 times, and so I ended up being a singer. Yes.
Can I have an autograph?
Yes, you may have an autograph when I'm finished. I'll be delighted to give you an autograph. Clear in the back there. Well, as I said, it was education, it was informative. I cannot tell you what a thrill it was to have been in all of these great countries that we've never thought of or been in. For example, London, I sang for one of the Queen Anne, the daughter of Queen Elizabeth in London. I sang there for many years. I sang in Rome, where it was, had a great historical significance and importance. The Roman Empire and the British Empire, 2 of the greatest empires of all time. But it's been fascinating to be in these countries and to see how the people live. I've been in very, very poor countries too, where people don't even have enough food to eat. But it's basically been informative, educational, and I've really enjoyed it. Yes.
Okay, so how did you meet your wife and say, what were you wearing? What was your hair like? What did you say to her?
What was my hair like? I mean, you're really cruel. I had hair then, though. How did I propose? Well, we were engaged for 1.5 years, and then I asked her to marry me. And so we got married, and so I actually met her through my mother, because she was a registered nurse. My mother was ill at one point. She was looking after my mother. Way in the back, yes.
Are you aware that you saw my stepdad dad from Lion King?
I heard aware, but I didn't hear the name. What was the name?
Mufasa.
Everybody's talking at the same time. I only have 2 ears. But what did they say?
You sound like Mufasa from The Lion King. What are the questions?
Oh, he said,
Earl Jones.
oh, well, you know what? I've actually performed with James Earl Jones. But isn't The Lion King, how many of you seen The Lion King? Great. I saw it when it first came out. I saw it when it first came out in New York City at Radio City Music Hall. I've seen it 3 times since, and it's just really, really a great Broadway musical, I must say. Okay, I know that it's almost time to kind of wrap this up because I know you can't wait to get back to your classes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
at what age did your voice deepen?
At what age did my voice deepen? Okay, that's a very good question. When I was in junior high school, Don Gunnison was a high school choral director. And he asked the principal of the junior high, could I come sing in the high school choir? That had never been done before. And so he got permission, and I sang first soprano all during high school with the girls. So I really enjoyed being in that section. And my voice didn't change until my senior year in high school. And so it changed when I was 18 years of age. And I could sing an octave higher than high C that the sopranos sing. And then all of a sudden, the bottom dropped out.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, right over here.
What's the strangest song or music that you've had to sing?
What is the strangest song or music that I've had to sing? Well, I told you I've sung in all these different languages. I've sung the composers like Verdi and Mozart and Bach and Brahms and Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, etc. But I've also sung what we call contemporary music. There was a very famous composer named, I was going to say Bill Jerome, but he was my school teacher friend. He played the horn. Gunther Schuller. He wrote an opera called Die Heimsuchung in German, which meant Carter Jones. He was after the book, Kafka, The Trial. And because it was contemporary music, it was what we call 12-tone music. That was very difficult to learn to sing. It was actually an opera, but the premiere was in Hamburg, we'd say Hamburg, West Germany. And that was back in 1970. It was a very, very, very difficult piece of music to sing, but I was able to do it. So, well, I think the boss said only one more question. So what I would like to say to all of you, I'm very happy to have been here with you. Please work hard and study in school. You have teachers who are here because they care about you. And be kind to one another. We know that there's this action called bullying in a lot of schools. I'm sure you don't have any bullies in your school, thank goodness. Right? Right, okay. Then that's good. Do you know why? I want you to know, remember this. If by some chance somebody should become a bully in your school, remember that the bully is a very insecure person. They're very insecure, and their actions are inferior to somebody who's not a bully. So feel sorry for them, pray for them, and if you see them bullying somebody else, you're not ratting on them, but go tell the superintendent or another teacher, because we're put on this earth to be kind to one another, to love one another, to help one another, and if a mistake is made, to forgive. So I wish all of you good health, study hard in school. I've been honored and humbled to be here and share a little bit of my life story with you. I wish you thank you. I wish you all good luck, and may God bless all of you. And really, I love all of you, so thank you.
You got more volume than that. Go.